The 1980s saw studios throwing astronomical budgets at passion projects, helmed by auteurs, music icons, and religious cults, betting everything on visions so ambitious and misguided that they didn't just fail at the box office. They bankrupted studios, ended careers, destroyed franchises, and became cautionary tales whispered in Hollywood boardrooms for decades, proving that sometimes the biggest disasters aren't the ones captured on screen, but the ones happening behind the camera. Saturn III traps two scientists living peacefully on a remote moon until an unstable captain arrives with an experimental robot powered by baby brains that's neurally linked to a psychotic mind. And yes, you read that correctly, this 9-foot killer robot runs on fetal tissue harvested from human fetuses, which somehow wasn't the weirdest thing happening on this cursed production. Young novelist Martin Amis wrote the original script titled The Helper that interested everyone before unnamed script doctors gangbanged it to death, with one crew member later telling Amis that every writer in town took uncredited swings at it until nobody could tell if it was stillborn or just murdered by committee, leaving a confused mess that kept changing throughout filming. Kirk Douglas spent the entire production ripping his clothes off at every opportunity, openly admitting to outgoing director John Barry, "I'm unbelievably insecure," while standing there naked, inspiring Amis to later write the novel Money, about an aging actor determined to prove his virility by stripping in every scene. Farrah Fawcett signed on for Amis's cerebral script, only to watch it morph into camp exploitation, enduring isolated shooting conditions, constant rewrites, and public speculation about her marriage breakup, while the studio prominently used promotional shots of her in leather and garters from a scene she demanded be cut from the final film. Harvey Keitel's entire performance got dubbed by British actor Roy Dotrice after he refused to loop his dialogue in post-production, creating vocal performance resembling a kung fu movie where lines like "your body is very beautiful, I'd like to use it" sound even creepier in clipped mid-Atlantic accent nobody asked for. The production became legendary disaster as Lord Lou Grade and Elliot Kastner somehow financed this incoherent mess, leading critics to ask why they felt compelled to support the lowest common denominator of filmmaking when they could have financed creative and intelligent material with the same money. Proving that sometimes the biggest mystery isn't the killer robot powered by baby brains, but how movies this cosmically stupid still manage to get million-dollar budgets and A-list stars who apparently can't keep their clothes on. Heaven's Gate earned its reputation as the film that killed a studio before audiences even walked into theaters. Michael Cimino's 4-hour Western epic follows Harvard-educated Marshal James Averill, returning to 1890s Wyoming during the Johnson County War, where wealthy cattle barons are systematically massacring immigrant farmers in brutal class warfare that exposes how American capitalism was built on violence against the working class. Cimino's obsession with authenticity transformed Montana into a circle of hell where cast and crew endured his perfectionism for over a year, building entire frontier towns from scratch, importing hundreds of extras, and shooting the same scene dozens of times, because the director decided the dust wasn't settling at the exact angle he wanted. Chris Christopherson suffered emotional exhaustion from Cimino's constantly changing vision and volatile temperament, watching budgets explode from $11 million to over $44 million. As the director insisted on period-accurate details, nobody would notice while unpredictable weather halted production for days, and everyone questioned whether they were making art or career suicide. The studio initially released a nearly 4-hour cut that critics savaged so brutally. They pulled it from theaters after 1 week, then imposed severe edits chopping it to 149 minutes. That removed so much content, the epic themes got lost entirely, confusing audiences who couldn't follow what remained. United Artists nearly went bankrupt and got sold to MGM in the aftermath, prompting complete shakeup in studio leadership that ended the new Hollywood era when directors wielded unchecked creative control, making Heaven's Gate the ultimate cautionary tale that changed how Hollywood financed ambitious projects for 2 decades, proving that sometimes destroying a studio is the most lasting artistic achievement a film can have. Cannonball Run II proves that Hollywood's solution to sequels is always just doing the first one again, but worse, following Sheikh Abdul bin Falafel, ordered by his father to win the illegal Connecticut to California race for family glory, while McClure and his Captain Chaos alter ego try cheating their way through, alongside kung fu mechanics and gadget-laden cars, though the actual race is just backdrop for convoluted mob subplot that hijacks everything. Director Hal Needham stuffed Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., an orangutan, and Catherine Bach into the same desert location shot so many times you'd swear they only rented one highway for the entire cross-country race, because that's exactly what happened when he discovered sequels don't require new ideas, just more celebrities willing to cash checks while pretending identical mountain backdrops somehow represent different states. The film dedicates the first 45 minutes to character antics and gang-related hijinks before the race even begins, frustrating audiences expecting action, while Needham found himself overwhelmed by sprawling cast and pressure to outdo the original by adding more of everything without understanding that more celebrities doesn't equal better movie, especially when they're visibly past their prime. Catherine Bach joined as Marcy Thatcher to add Southern charm familiar to Dukes of Hazzard fans, finding herself amid aging legends whose celebrity cameos were meant to bring star power, but instead highlighted an ensemble, making humor fall flat while she remained professional amid production chaos nobody wanted to acknowledge. The convoluted mafia subplot featuring multiple gangs hijacked the film's pace entirely, with Needham's direction creating what critics described as rolling cocktail party rather than race movie, leading to critical and commercial failure that proves sometimes the biggest disaster is making a film so unfocused that even an orangutan, Jackie Chan, and Frank Sinatra in the same frame can't save it from being expensive mess that makes studios question whether celebrity density alone constitutes a plot. Dr. Detroit turns timid college professor Clifford Skridlow into a bold, larger-than-life criminal persona after flamboyant pimp Smoothwalker accidentally ropes him into Chicago's underground prostitution scene. Suddenly responsible for protecting a group of working women from the ruthless mob boss Mom, the mild-mannered academic is hurled into wild parties, high-energy chases, and comic chaos, discovering that the biggest role you ever play might be the one you never meant to create. Dan Aykroyd filmed this while mourning his close friend John Belushi, who died just the year before, channeling grief and personal vulnerability into Clifford's transformation, while simultaneously falling in love with co-star Donna Dixon in whirlwind romance that brought warmth to frequently chaotic shoot across Chicago's real nightlife spots, creating the kind of behind-the-scenes emotional turbulence that either destroys productions or makes them weirdly authentic. The ratings board pressed filmmakers to tone down suggestive language and nightlife sequences from the original script, forcing rewrites and heavy editing that trimmed Chicago's wilder strip club atmospheres and softened dialogue between Clifford and the women, with Donna Dixon later expressing disappointment that elements showcasing the women's toughness and camaraderie got muted to secure wider R-rated release. Conservative critics and parental groups denounced the movie for glamorizing vice and exposing teenagers to adult subject matter, sparking heated op-eds and television debates, where several colleges debated banning campus screenings for fear it undermined academic standards by framing the professor as comic anti-hero managing sex work. Dan defended the project in interviews, arguing for satire and compassion over moral panic, and suggesting that the film's real focus was personal growth rather than vice. The backlash, however, marked a moment when comedy became a flashpoint for broader social anxieties, showing that the real controversy often comes down to whether audiences feel you're laughing with your characters or at the institutions they're tangled up in. Supergirl should have been Warner Bros.' chance to show that female superheroes could carry a blockbuster. The story follows young Kara Zor-El, who leaves the hidden Kryptonian refuge of Argo City to retrieve its lost energy source on Earth. Once there, she ends up juggling high school life while battling Selena, an aspiring sorceress who discovers the powerful device and plans to use it to seize control through magic and demonic forces. The film became the disaster that nearly killed the entire Superman franchise by demonstrating studios had absolutely no idea how to market women in capes without drowning them in occult nonsense, and Faye Dunaway chewing scenery like it's her last meal before the apocalypse, combining teenage drama with Satan-adjacent imagery in ways that made you wonder if anyone involved had ever actually met a teenager. Helen Slater was only 20 when cast and immediately thrown into intensive physical training learning wire work and combat choreography, spending months preparing to embody a Kryptonian hero, while industry insiders openly questioned whether audiences would pay to watch a woman fly, enduring a male-dominated set where studio executives questioned every creative choice. Certain scenes involving Faye Dunaway's sorceress performing occult rituals got cut for UK broadcast after parent groups raised concerns, while VHS releases saw edits reducing satanic undertones that somehow made it into a movie ostensibly aimed at children who wanted to see a girl in a cape punch bad guys, not witness demonic possession. Critics and parent organizations argued the occult content combined with violent action was inappropriate for children, while Supergirl toy marketing intensified debates about whether the film empowered girls or just taught them that being a superhero means fighting witches who want to sacrifice you to dark forces, contributing to swift theater exit and reputation as the disaster that taught Hollywood female superheroes don't work, which is certainly one conclusion you could draw instead of the correct one that maybe don't make your female superhero movie about Satan worship. National Lampoon's European Vacation follows the Griswold family as they bumble across Europe after Clark wins a game show, taking Ellen, Rusty, and Audrey through England, France, Germany, and Italy. Along the way, they collide with local customs, stumble through famous landmarks, and misread just about every situation, turning Clark into a well-meaning but hopelessly out-of-his-depth tourist whose enthusiasm creates as many problems as it solves. The production became as chaotic as the fictional Vacation, when director Amy Heckerling and Chevy Chase waged creative warfare across multiple countries, with Chase insisting on improvising and rewriting scenes to lean into physical comedy, while Heckerling pressed for narrative consistency, leading to heated arguments that nearly halted filming until studio executives mediated truces that pleased nobody. Chase endured physical exhaustion and sustained injuries during elaborate stunts, particularly in the infamous London roundabout sequence, where he terrorized actual British drivers, and the Italian scenes where he proved Americans can destroy centuries of European culture in under 2 hours, if properly motivated by ignorance and enthusiasm. The film's irreverent humor provoked criticism in France and Germany, where civic groups accused it of perpetuating negative stereotypes, while U.S. parent associations decried the nudity, crude jokes, and satirical take on family values as proof that the Vacation franchise had officially run out of ideas and resorted to showing Chevy Chase's bare ass as substitute for actual comedy. The backlash and uneven reviews cemented the perception that it lacked the original's heart, and even cast members later admitted the controversy overshadowed its comedic merits. In the end, the sequel faltered because it was merely adequate, and adequacy feels even thinner when you're following a comedy that defined vacation disasters for a generation, especially when the big creative swing boils down to the same thing but with different accents and more nudity. Poltergeist II, The Other Side, follows the Freeling family seeking refuge in Phoenix after their first haunted house ordeal, only to discover darkness pursuing them through the malevolent Reverend Cain, a puritanical cult leader turned avenging spirit who led his followers to death in caves beneath their previous home, and now wants Carol Ann dragged into the afterlife to join them. The production became haunted by genuine tragedy that made fictional ghosts seem quaint, as Julian Beck accepted the role while already dying from stomach cancer. He kept private from most of the cast, his gaunt appearance and intense aura lending genuine terror to the performance, as he insisted on filming through extreme fatigue and pain because he believed playing an undead cult leader while actively dying would be his artistic legacy. Beck's commitment to the role, while confronting his own mortality, created performance that felt less like acting and more like documentary, of someone channeling actual death, with cast members describing his presence as mesmerizing and deeply unsettling as they watched him pour real suffering into scenes about a monster pursuing a child into the afterlife before he died, before the film's release. Young Heather O'Rourke, at only 10, was repeatedly exposed to frightening practical effects and elaborate stunts, becoming genuinely terrified during scenes with grotesque puppetry, despite the team's efforts to shield her, leading co-stars Jobeth Williams and Craig T. Nelson to devise comfort rituals, holding her hand and explaining the special effects after each take to reassure a kid who probably shouldn't have been put through any of this. Parent groups condemned the sequel's depictions of possession and nightmarish violence as too intense for young audiences, forcing television broadcasts and VHS releases to cut disturbing scenes involving Cain's cult backstory, contributing to lasting reputation as the cursed sequel where the horror behind the camera proved more disturbing than anything achieved through special effects. The Bonfire of the Vanities takes Tom Wolfe's scathing bestseller about 1980s excess and follows Sherman McCoy, a Wall Street bond trader whose life unravels after he and his mistress Maria accidentally hit a young black man with their car in the Bronx, triggering media circus stoked by ambitious prosecutors and tabloid reporters that transforms him from master of the universe to social pariah and satirical examination of greed, hubris, and racial divisions. Brian De Palma, Tom Hanks, and a cast immediately began destroying it through ego, incompetence, and the kind of creative disagreements that make you understand why some books should just stay books. With Hanks taking the role at pivotal career moment, only to discover playing an unlikable character requires more than just being America's sweetheart in an expensive suit. Hanks later openly called it one of the loneliest and most stressful experiences of his career, admitting the isolated shoot left him questioning his choices while he tried to find humanity in a character whose defining trait is complete lack of self-awareness, which is difficult when your director wants biting satire and you're hardwired to make people like you. Melanie Griffith routinely demanded script rewrites to soften her character and objected to De Palma's direction, causing multi-day shooting halts, while Bruce Willis clashed with both Griffith and De Palma over improvisations, creating on-set arguments that spilled to tabloids as everyone seemed determined to prove you can't satirize ego and excess when your production is actively embodying both. Critics and community leaders hammered the movie before it even came out for the way it handled race and social conflict, with civic organizations leaning on theaters to pull promo materials. The box office collapsed immediately, turning the whole thing into a cautionary tale about watching talented people torch their own project before audiences even get a chance to decide for themselves. And in this case, the people who did see it pretty much agreed it earned its reputation as one of the most spectacular faceplants in Hollywood history.